Welcome in everyone to another video on the channel, and today we're talking about Cross-Guild. Yes, and you might be wondering, hey, what's going on with Cross-Guild? Anything new, anything surprising? Well, riddle me this. What is the point of Cross-Guild in the final war upcoming, right? Like, what are they supposed to be doing? How are they relevant going on in the future? Let's talk about what's going on. And also, I don't need a good reason to talk about Crocodile Mihawk other than I want to. So I thought we could kind of discuss Cross Guild a little bit and see potentially what's going on with them. Do you have any ideas? Please leave them in the comments because this is a pretty wide topic here. I think it's pretty much up for debate because clearly Oda has a plan for gathering Buggy, Mihawk, Crocodile together, but it hasn't been fully fleshed out because is it really just to have some bounty system for like some lower level to Vice Admiral level Marines? Seems kind of lame. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So Cross Guild got formed, right? Buggy, Mihawk, Crocodile. Crocodile's like, hey, I want to get back into Operation Utopia. Hey, Mihawk, you should join because he's really strong. He went, okay, sure. They find Buggy. They eventually join. And now, after a little bit of time, Buggy is now the face of Cross Guild. He's become an emperor, which originally Mihawk and Crocodile did not like. But eventually they went, having an idiot as our face of the Cross Guild, that might actually help us. So what they've been doing is they have, of course, the bounty system on the Marines to kind of counteract the bounty system that Marines have on pirates. And then eventually, Buggy said, you know what, god damn it, I want to become king of the pirates. So now, technically, on a face level, they're hunting the One Piece. Yes, and how many poneglyphs do they have? 0. They're not very close to finding the One Piece, but you know what they do have? They have Buggy, which means they've got the power of humor on their side. I could just, like, imagine just Buggy just has, like, a Shanks Fever card, and he just follows him. That could be a way that goes down. But talking about really what they're going to be doing in the future, Oda hasn't touched on Cross Guild in a little bit of time here because we've had so much stuff going on in Elbaf, that really long ass, like, half a year flashback with Rocks and Herald and God Valley and all that. So what could they be getting up to? Well, I think one of the questions that needs to be answered is who are they gonna recruit? Yes, how about let's do a draft. A One Piece draft. Who would they be taking number 1 overall? Well, with the current group, right? Buggy's not really that strong. He's got a lot of pirates, but they're not really that strong. Crocodile is strong, but not super, super strong. Mihawk is kind of close-ish to a top tier. That's about it. So they would need to draft some people. Now, I've seen a lot of conversations about Doflamingo and Moria, which got me thinking, how cool would it be if in the future Cross Guild just builds up like a band of ex-warlords? They all get together to fight the world government. That would be kind of cool. I think I would be down to see that. The two names that you're going to hear a lot when we talk about Cross Guild is Doflamingo and Gecko Moria. Now, just from a baseline, I don't really think we could get those two to work together, because if you remember at Marineford, there was a little bit of an incident where Doflamingo attempted to kill Moria, but didn't, but still injured him. You know what I mean? Because the world government was like, yeah, we don't have any use for him anymore because he's kind of weak. Which means it would be difficult for me to believe that Moria would be like, yeah, I'm down to work with this guy. But I can still see them trying to recruit Moria just to see what would happen. The other idea, Doflamingo, is an interesting one because I've seen a lot of conversation. This would make a lot of sense, right? They're saying, hey, we have these bounties on the Marines. We need to get stronger for this final battle, which I'll get into what their motivations might be in a second. Let's go to Impel Down and attack Impel Down. That would make a ton of sense, right? Because they're targeting Marines. The biggest jail that the Marines have, and who could they get out of that? They could get Doflamingo, and they could get Weevil. Now, if you remember at Marineford, Doflamingo said to Crocodile, hey, we should work together. And Crocodile, of course, told him get lost. So Doflamingo has some interest in working with Crocodile, but of course, a lot of stuff has happened with Doflamingo. His entire operation, his home base, if you will, has gotten completely taken away from him. So maybe he doesn't have the motivations anymore. But I think Doflamingo's current motivation is just that he's pissed off. I could see him potentially joining Cross Guild if they attack Impel Down. Weevil is also there, which would kind of get along the idea of, hey, gathering all these 4 more Warlords of the Sea, which would be awesome because currently they have 3. They could add a bunch. That would be really cool. And then, of course, Moria, as I said, is another one that's out there and available, potentially Boa Hancock. I've also heard Law's name thrown out, which, again, it really kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. Law working with, if they did recruit Doflamingo, that'd be a really tough sell. Same thing with Moria. So there's kind of some interesting layers about who they would get, but I think their first overall draft pick should be Doflamingo just from a pure power standpoint, but Moria also could be interesting as well. So say they do have some draft of sort, they start picking up some former warlords, they start getting some strength, and you go, okay, we've got Mihawk, we have potentially Doflamingo, we have a couple top tier fighters. What is the entire point of Cross Guild, right? Are they really just going to continue to pick off these kind of small to mid-high level Marines? Well, maybe not, because I think the entire thing Oda's drawing up is, hey, there's this final war coming, we've got 3 big factions, Blackbeard, Straw Hats, and the World Government, but there's also a lot of separate factions, i.e. like the Red Hair Pirates, Dragon, and we have some others like Cross Guild. What could they be doing? They're kind of a wild card moving into potentially a final war here, and Oda has mentioned that it might be kind of like a battle royale here at the end, so we have this separate group and we have their intentions. So I think one of two things is going to happen with Cross Guild for the remainder of the okay, one of 3 things I think is going to happen with Cross Guild. I could see a potential scenario similar to the Rocks Pirates. The Rocks Pirates just kind of like a band of really strong, like mismatched characters that didn't really want to be together and had their own separate motivations. I could see the same thing happening with Cross Guild, is that they just kind of break up. Because Crocodile, Mihawk, Buggy, those are not super tightly aligned people, especially if they recruit other strong characters like former warlords that would have ambitions of their own. But I think that's not going to happen, although it would make sense. I don't think it's going to happen simply from a why would Oda do that standpoint. Like, why would he build up Cross Guild in the New World here just to have them break up randomly during the final war? I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think the next question, obviously, is who are they fighting? Are they really trying to get to the One Piece, right? Is their goal really to get to the One Piece, which it might actually be, because their understanding of the One Piece is that it's going to be Gol Roger's treasure, right? So they might go for that. Crocodile might say, ooh, that could help fund our infrastructure in the future. So that might actually be something that happens as they try to go get the One Piece, but of course they realize we have 0 poneglyphs, so how would we actually do that? Which they would have to find a way, of course. But then there it gets to the next question, which I think is the idea that most people are getting to, is that they're going to fight either or both of the Marines and the world government. Now, you might think the idea that maybe they fight Luffy because of Crocodile, if they recruit him, Doflamingo, Moria, that whole thing is that Luffy defeated a lot of them. But I don't think there's really a point for them to target the Straw Hats. They've mostly just been targeting Marines. I think they're going to continue to do so. There might be a point where the main group fighting the Marines could be Cross Guild, right? Luffy, eventually we're going to get to Marie-Joie and fight a lot of the world government. And the people that might be fighting the Marines, or at least a large chunk of some of the high-ranking Marines, could be Cross Guild. We could have scenarios where we see admirals versus some of the top-tier fighters at Cross Guild. That could make a lot of sense, as of course Oda's been setting up with this whole bounty thing, that their main antagonist to the Marines, or their main antagonistic toward the Marines. So that could make a lot of sense. Do I think that they're probably going to get involved, like, with Luffy against the world government when he fights them? Which, of course, I have made a couple videos about how I think potentially Blackbeard's the one that's going to take down Emu, just from, like, a narrative standpoint. Like, hey, I'm Rox's kid. Rox said I will be back in the Flower Room. That would now mean it would be Blackbeard, which would make a lot of sense. But I digress. In theory, it would say that Luffy is the one fighting the world government. Why would Cross Guild join? Yes, I just think it's too separate of an ideology from each person in there. Why would they be thinking, hey, I want to go take down the world government? I think they're thinking specifically the Marines. I don't think they're thinking, hey, we should go start fighting 5 Elders. I don't think there's even a bounty on any of the 5 Elders. I'm pretty sure Sakazuki is the highest member that has a bounty. Let me check. Okay, I did just check. The 5 Elders do not have a bounty. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think I'm going to see them fighting like the higher-ups in the world government. I really think their role is either they're going to be a contender of the One Piece, or they're genuinely going to be the organization that, like, takes down the Marines. And I say the word take down, which is kind of weird, because eventually, right, Kobe is going to lead the Marines. That's kind of what Oda has been setting up this whole time. So if Cross Guild fights the Marines, that would be kind of weird for them to win. So what I'm saying in general is that there really are a wild card, because a lot of stuff that it seems like they're going to be doing, chasing the One Piece, fighting the Marines, they're just not, it's not going to work. They're not going to achieve that because it just wouldn't make any sense in the story. So in general, Cross Guild is a wild card, and a wild card I'm excited to see, because I'm not overly a fan of the thing that Oda does, is that he brings characters back repeatedly, even when they should have been dead. I'm not a big Lucci fan, to be frank with you, but I am a fan of Crocodile and Mihawk, not really too much of Buggy, for fairly obvious reasons. He's not much of a character that adds too much But Crocodile and Mihawk, I'm very down to see what they get up to. I guess it's mostly just going to be Crocodile's plans, because Mihawk's just like, look, man, I want to be left alone. I was being left alone, and now I'm not because this damn warlord system got abolished. I don't know. If you guys have any ideas about Cross Guild, let me know, because I think it's definitely the biggest wild card we're going to see, especially if, because I do think it would make a lot of sense for them to break into Impel Down, free some of the former warlords, and maybe some of the former members of Baroque Works. That would make a ton of sense as one of their next steps. But beyond that, I really don't know how involved we're going to see them in the future story, but clearly there's going to be something that happens. So let me know what you guys think. Also, if you guys can leave a like and a sub, that would help a lot, as this is a new channel. Should be uploading 3 to 4 long form videos a week with some shorts. That is the goal, at least. Anyways, I appreciate y'all watching, and I will see you guys later this week.